Welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. Tonight we're going to follow up on our two previous shows about State Question 689, commonly known as the Oklahoma English Only Initiative. Basically, this measure would make English the official language of Oklahoma and outlaw the spending of any state money to publish or provide services in any language other than English. Exceptions are made for the teaching of foreign, but not Indian, languages in the schools. I'm concerned that if State Question 689 makes it onto the ballot, it will pass because it seems so innocuous to most people. They don't realize the harm it could do to Indian language teaching and to services for all people who find themselves in the linguistic minority, including Native Americans, deaf people, Spanish speakers, and immigrants. At this point, there are several legal challenges pending to State Question 689. If they are not successful, the measure will be on the ballot. But since the cutoff for the November ballot has passed, it's likely that it would not be on until November of 2002, which will be the next statewide election. Now, tonight we're going to see excerpts of a tape made by Susan K. Smith, and I want to thank her for permission to use this tape. It's the tape of a forum sponsored by the Citizens League at Rose State College. I think it was September 18th, Monday before last. You know, I've spoken at some length about the harm I think this measure could do to Indian language preservation and all my reasons for opposing it. But nothing I've said to date makes my point as well, I think, as the words of Senator Carol Martin of Comanche, one of its sponsors, who is featured prominently on this tape. You'll see that she's the next speaker following Marcia Haig. Let's take a look at the tape.
The NEA has given its position on English only, and this is what it said. I thought this was a good quote. The English language amendment is the wrong remedy for whatever of America's social ills it strives to solve, for 5 reasons. It ignores our country's civil rights tradition. It fails to promote the integration of language minority rights. It neglects the need for American merchants to communicate in foreign markets. It restricts the government's ability to reach all citizens, and it raises constitutional concerns. Linda Chavez, who is with the Center for Equal Opportunity, on the other side says, unless we become serious about protecting our heritage as a unilingual society bound by a common language, we may lose a precious resource that has helped us forge a national character and identity from so many diverse elements.
Now, I am an assistant professor of linguistics at the University of Oklahoma, and this afternoon I would like to speak only as a linguist and not as a citizen. So I'm going to limit my remarks to facts and educated opinions and observations about languages. One of the things that is very important to understand are the effects of laws like this kind of, I would have to say, an oppressive law on languages that are spoken by small populations. One of the, and I'm of course referring to Native American languages, which are under terrible language pressure. I'm also talking about languages like American Sign Language. American Sign Language is not English and therefore would not be protected under this law. According to this law, we could use state funds to promote lip reading among the deaf, but not sign language. And I bet you are going to be saying, but we weren't talking about them. We weren't talking about them. We were talking about the Indians. But in your zeal, if you're on that side, to purify and unite monolingually, is that what Linda Chavez said? That isn't going to happen, but you will run the small languages off the planet. Okay, now one thing we also know about extinct languages is that when they become extinct, they never become viable again. Once these languages are lost, it's never going to, they will never be resurrected again. Now, I particularly worry about efforts that are being made by tribes in particularly the Choctaw Nation, with whom I'm well affiliated. Choctaw Nation plans to put the Choctaw language in 68 public schools next year. Okay, 68 public schools means state money. State money means no-go. I worry about the little Comanche daycare center where the little kids are learning to speak their native language, but when we're talking about daycare centers, we're often talking about subsidized lunch funds, state money, no go. We're supposed to be speaking English here. I worry about court interpreters for the deaf and public forums for the deaf if we can no longer have sign language for people because it is not English. Okay, another point that I would really like to make is that people, when they learn languages, most people have to learn languages when they are children. There are a few talented people who can learn them as adults, but most people cannot. It's very important that people be bilingual, meaning being able to use 2 or more languages fluently because of having learned them as children in a natural way. Adults, even if they are forced to use another language, even if you criminalize the language that they are using, will not be able to speak English no matter what kind of rights you deprive them. They can't do it. And I dare say any more than many of you can speak a language other than English if you try to learn it as an adult. Most people want to and try to learn the language of the country that they are living in. Okay, another important point is that it's economic pressure that makes people give up one language for another. There is no more economically dominant society than this one, for starters, and those of other English-speaking societies. People will stop learning their own language to speak English because they believe that it benefits them. We don't need anything else. We do not need to criminalize the speaking of another language, where a grandmother could not get her Social Security benefits because she cannot talk to the Social Security officer. I don't think that this was what we were talking about. English is taking over anyway. We do not need to have legal coercion for English to become and remain the dominant language on earth. And one more point, and that is that in most human societies on earth, people are commonly bilingual or fluent in a second language. We are a very strange society in that we don't speak another language. We don't care to, and we regularly try to criminalize the speaking of other languages in our boundaries. We're peculiar that way. Other people wonder what's wrong with us because our children and our adults don't commonly speak a second language, and we don't encourage that.
I am Choctaw, I'm Cherokee, I'm Irish and German. Each one of those, Irish and German, was definitely an immigrant coming over. And I remember the stories of my Irish ancestors and my German ancestors, and they've been passed down. So I don't take this lightly, and I don't say it as trying to exclude anyone, or even to the point where I'm saying it's illegal and it's absolutely prohibited. Oh, come on. That is ridiculous. That is not what we're trying to do, and that's not something that I would even sign my name to if someone was proposing that. But I am trying to not enable or to somehow enable people to stay in a language that is a barrier to them. I want sometimes, in a sense, like a parent would do to a child when it comes to tough love. Sometimes the things that we do to children or that we continue to enable people is not always that great for them. Now, the Indian nations in Oklahoma are already protected under the federal law. We don't address those. Cannot be addressed. They're already in statute in the federal level. So what we are addressing is the issue, do we make it easier for immigrants to not have to learn English? English has been the dominant language in our society from the beginning. It still is the most dominant language. I think of the immigrants that come over and they can't communicate. They can't speak English or know anyone in their area except the community in which usually they locate so that they can communicate, because that's usually the people that speak the same language they speak. Want to talk isolation? That's isolation when you cannot communicate with the people around you. Want to talk isolation? That's when you can't go to the grocery store and communicate. Want to talk isolation? The gentleman out front that was blowing off the sidewalk when I went to the back end of the university. I rolled my window down and I said, "Excuse me, is this a communication building?" I don't know. He did not know the building in which he was working because he couldn't speak the language. He couldn't communicate with me. Now, was that wrong? No, it's not wrong. It just keeps him in a situation where he'll be blowing the streets for maybe a little longer. Economically, yes, you're right. Incentive comes by economics. If I really want to prosper in America, when I get here, what do? What's most of you immigrants do? You learn the language. I know people, and I know friends, and I know family in which they came, and some chose never to learn the language. They chose that, that's right, and it is their American choice, and they can continue to do that as long as they live here. And one of my friends is 40 years living here. They're Portuguese. They chose not to. They live in a very small Portuguese community in Fresno, California. He's worked on the same dairy for 40 years. He makes very little less, very much more than he did when he got here. We're talking economics. So do I encourage that person? You know where she shops? The only Portuguese store in town. You know what she reads? The only Portuguese paper in town. You think they can isolate her and tell her what she wants to hear? Yeah, one paper. That's all she gets to hear. That's all she gets to communicate. She doesn't know the big picture. She doesn't know 5 or 6 newspapers in town that could give her new, innovative ideas or hopefully help. No. I'm going to talk of another subject because I've been told that, well, this is wrong, this is going to hurt, this is bad. You know what? They said the same thing about the measure in the state of California about not allowing bilingual teaching. Oh, the uproar. You would have heard. Had threats and everything already in the newspaper on me that it's going to hurt me. They did get rid of Pete Wilson, which was the governor. But guess what? 3 years later, the data, by not allowing the teachers to teach in a bilingual class, allowing the first and second graders to be taught in most professionals and professors from Harvard and everyone else that it's going to harm those children. It's going to devastate their self-esteem. It's not good. Everyone. 30 years they've done it out in California. Guess what the test scores are in just 3 years? Tripled and quadrupled. Now, did it take his language away? No. They still speak their language and their culture. It's still the same at home. And we're not changing the culture or the things that they believe and what they feel. Those are things we all have in each one of our families. I don't care if we're all Americans born right here. We have our cultures, our family's a culture.
I have never heard anyone challenge the fact that English is the official language of this country. On the contrary, if you're going to live in this country, we encourage everyone to learn English. People are in programs making efforts to learn English without any legislation forcing you to do that. I am an example of that, and I resent the paternalistic idea that in order to do what is right for me, I need a law that will tell me that that's good for me. Immigrant communities have their own initiative and their own drive to understand what is good for them and what is advantageous for their own individual lives without necessity of paternalistic laws. I will also tell you by personal experience that learning English is not an overnight process. It takes time. English, I understand, is one of the most difficult languages to learn. And we feel very strongly that windows of opportunity must be provided for people while they're learning English. Children learn English very quickly. Children learn any languages very quickly. When you get to be an adult, as Marcia has indicated, it's very difficult to do it. It is not, you don't need a law that tells you, you must learn English. You cannot simply do it. If I tell you to talk to me in Spanish, you may want to, but if you haven't been taught and you haven't been given that opportunity, it doesn't matter how many laws you have, you still will not be able to talk to me in Spanish. I have been very fortunate to travel all over the world, and I see that in other countries, the issue of learning more than one language is considered a privilege and an advantage. In Europe, anybody that doesn't speak several languages is considered a second-class citizen. In Latin America, where I am from, it is the privileged classes, the ones that can afford it, that send their children to bilingual schools to give them that upper hand and that opportunity to learn other languages besides their native language. But it seems that in Oklahoma we fear bilingualism, and I'm thinking that idea, it enhances the image of Oklahoma as a backward-thinking state, and it robs our children of the opportunity to become citizens of the world. This is a country created by immigrants. Today's immigrants work, contribute to the economy, and they pay taxes even while they're learning English, and even if they don't know English. Oklahoma does not spend any money on providing bilingual services, or the amount is probably minimal. You see, also in Oklahoma, we do not have any kind of bilingual pay differential, so it doesn't cost anymore to hire somebody who's bilingual or not. It doesn't cost anymore, so what harm does it do if you can hire people bilingual? We ought to be helping our children become bilingual or trilingual even better. I think that we haven't had a problem in Oklahoma, but I see the issue as being outside sources and money outside of Oklahoma that is coming in the state to pass an initiative, and outside states or interests, again with a paternalistic attitude, coming to tell us what's good for Oklahoma. It's outside funding that funded the circulation of this petition. As Governor Keating said at a meeting that I attended, this is a mean-spirited law, and it makes no sense. I serve on the board of directors of the Federal Reserve Bank, where we have all these reports about how desperate the country is for workers at all levels, technical levels and entry level. So you see, we ought to be doing efforts to benefit the economy by attracting workers, not to send messages that Oklahoma is unfriendly to workers. I would like to, have a magic wand to keep every worker in Oklahoma who doesn't speak English or who, is in the labor market to quit working for a month. Let me tell you, your grocery bill will go up. Industries like hotels, motels, grocery stores, restaurants would come to a standstill. Immigrants are a strong force in the economy. The logic or the lack of logic is overwhelming to me. Why should we limit our horizons to a single language when the global economy rewards those who accommodate diversity and who are trilingual or bilingual? Why pass laws that repress bilingualism, which is a resource that our world competitors are protecting and developing, and here we're trying to, close our horizons? Compared, unfortunately, and with sadness, I said sadness, truly with sadness in my heart, I tell you that compared to the rest of the world, the United States is an underdeveloped country in the area of languages. Besides the benefits of bilingualism in the economy, world affairs, and community that I have mentioned, there are also a lot of individual benefits. I think that there are many studies now that have shown that even infants exposed to other languages, there's a process, a neuro-linguistic process there that occurs that stimulates the development of their brain cells so that their IQs have raised when they're exposed to other that. Why rob our children from the opportunity to have that experience? Cognitive and academic growth is very much enhanced by bilingualism. Preservation of values. Let me tell you, immigrant communities like the Latino community, where we have a tremendous contribution to make to this country, where we see our family lifestyle disintegrating. One of the strengths of our culture is a cohesive family lifestyle. And we are going to be robbing the ability for grandmothers to communicate with their younger generations in their own language. I think there are many career advantages to those of us that with pride own to the fact that we're bilingual. I'm so sorry that I dropped my French in school because I would give anything to be trilingual. I think cultural vitality in the community, and there's many, many other advantages. Divisive is this law, as Governor Kitty refers to it. Because you see, ignorance fosters parochialism, which encourages intolerance, and it breeds conflict and limits collaboration. This type of law has a negative impact in our democratic society and in the race relations in this community. It would actually have a cost to the state because you see agencies that receive or states that receive federal monies have mandates that provide free access to services. So as in other states that have passed this legislation, it has opened the doors for litigation. So why create a problem that we haven't had? While other countries value knowing more than one language, here we want to put a stigma on minority languages. And unfortunately, when you do that, children in minority communities are going to internalize that stigma, and they're going to feel themselves as less than anybody else just because you are bilingual, rather than being proud, like I am, of being able to speak English with an accent and Spanish, my native language. Do we want to exterminate Native American languages? 1/3 of indigenous languages already have disappeared. Oklahoma should be spending funding in creating programs that protect native languages as a precious heritage in the community, not try to exterminate them. The message of official English is knowing one language is better than knowing two. Is this really the message that we want for Oklahoma to signal to the world? I think not. Let's not rob our children of the gift of exposure to other languages. We in the Latino community advocate for English Plus, which affirms that English is the official language of this country, which we never have negated, but also affirms the value of learning other languages. I am an eternal optimist. I will tell you, in California, I always say that Governor Pete Wilson was our best friend in terms of empowering the Latino community. And my expectation is that someday I am going to be saying, thank you, Senator Martin, for empowering the Latino community politically, because I can tell you that already there are many statewide coalitions being formed. Sometimes oppression is the best motivator for unity and organization. So I see that someday the Latino community, along with the Native American community and the Asian community, perhaps are going to be favored by this repressive initiative that is going to motivate us to get out, become organized, and become, in this democracy, the voters that we all need to be. Thank you.
We really need to clear up one thing. It's not English only. It's called an official language. Only it advocates that I'm saying that you only can speak English in America. You can't speak another language. That is as false as the day is long. The official petition is not only, okay, so it's never been called English only. It's called an official language. And basically what it does is say that we won't continue to enable or print information, as much information, in all the different languages, is all it says.
We are educated. We've begun an education process. What is this bill? What does it really mean? What does it really say? Not what's being heard. As some volunteers went in the street, out in Tulsa, presenting to the people a different thing of what the bill really says. Educating our leaders and educating the impacted community. The Native Americans, the Hispanics, the Asians, the almost 500,000 or 200,000 Hispanics or 200 Native Americans, 100,000 Asians, and on, over 500,000 people that are here. Sorry, I'm a preacher. But let me finish with this. We're getting, as Pat Fidel said, I thank the lady here. We're mobilizing a statewide voter registration, voter education drive among Hispanics and everywhere. We'll see you at the polls. Not by ourselves, not by ourselves. There are other people, prominent people, English-speaking people only, that are behind us.
I'm worried about the term tough love. Yes, tough love does work, but tough love sometimes only needs to work when someone is doing something wrong, and speaking another language is not doing something wrong. As for dominant languages and the importance of dominant languages, if we talk about the global community, and we want to be truly members of the global community, if we think of the major language that's spoken in the world, it's Mandarin Chinese. Maybe the global community should then dictate that Mandarin Chinese be spoken by all members of the world and all official language be done in Mandarin Chinese. Would we like that imposed on us? Would we be able to make fully informed decisions if we had to do it and read in Mandarin Chinese only?
By the way, if that seemed rather one-sided, it wasn't tricky editing on my part. It really reflected the balance of the crowd there that night. No one but Senator Martin really spoke out in favor of this measure. A postscript. Since the taping of this forum and the beginning of production on this program, months into the legal challenges in the Supreme Court, Senator Martin asked permission of the Supreme Court to withdraw her petition from consideration for the ballot. She did not state her reason. Maybe she sensed she was going to lose. I don't know. The court requested arguments on this point from the protestants and then reaction to these comments from Senator Martin's side. The comments from Senator Martin are due by March the 6th. Then the court will decide whether to drop the whole matter, which is what she wants, or to proceed with arguments for and against the appearance of English only on the ballot. Wordpath will keep you updated. See you next time on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene madaone kita. Na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene madaone kita. Na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene madaone kita. Na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene madaone kita. Na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene madaone kita.